Before we begin, I would like to introduce my YouTube channel, BL Nongsap. Let's start.
Let's dive right into one of the most famous stories ever told, the Christmas story. But here's the thing, we're not going to look at it as just a single, standalone event. Think of it more like the grand finale of a story that took centuries to unfold. It's all about a promise that was waited on for generations, and then, finally, kept.
You know, this quote just nails it. It perfectly frames the story not as some quaint little tale, but as the actual heartbeat of God's rescue plan. And that idea of it being whispered for centuries before it thundered into history, that's the key right there. This is a story about incredible anticipation finally meeting its fulfillment.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, let's use a simple picture. Imagine a family. For generations, they've been passing down this one incredible promise. One day, a very special guest is going to show up and change everything for them. And then finally, after all that waiting, there's a gentle knock at the door. That's the framework we're going to use, the promise that was made and the promise that was kept. All right, so let's start with that generations-long wait. We've got to go way back, long before that nativity scene we all know, to hear the very first whispers of this promise being made. So one of the first and really specific promises comes from the prophet Micah. And what's so cool about this is how specific it is. The promise isn't just, hey, a ruler's coming. It's that he will come from this tiny, seemingly unimportant town, Bethlehem. It's like the ultimate underdog story, baked right into the prophecy from the very beginning.
Then, the prophet Isaiah comes along and adds this other, just wild layer to the whole thing. He talks about a sign, a miracle really. A virgin will conceive, and this child will have a name, Emmanuel, that holds its own incredible promise. And we're going to get to what that means in just a bit. And this is where it gets kind of mind-blowing. When you look at the sheer scale of the wait, check out these dates. We are talking about a gap of roughly 700 years between when Isaiah and Micah made these prophecies and the actual birth of Jesus. 700 years. Can you imagine holding on to a promise for that long, passing it down generation after generation?
Okay, so after 7 centuries of waiting, the story finally pivots. That gentle knock at the door is finally heard. This is the moment where all those ancient promises start to become a present-day reality.
So how does this all unfold? Well, it happens in these 4 key moments, and it doesn't start with some big royal announcement or a military parade. Nope, it all kicks off with the first step. An angel visits a young, unknown woman named Mary. The Gospel of Luke tells us the angel Gabriel basically tells her the impossible, that she, a virgin, will conceive and give birth to a son, and she's to name him Jesus. But, Mary isn't left to figure this out on her own. That brings us to the second step. Her fiancé, Joseph, he gets a message too. An angel appears to him in a dream, confirming Mary's story and telling him not to be afraid. And it's right here that we see the first direct link back to those ancient promises.
And right there, the gospel writer Matthew just spells it out for us. He's basically saying, hey, remember that thing Isaiah said 700 years ago? Yeah, this is it. The connection is unmistakable. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel.
And that name, Emmanuel, it's a huge deal. It literally means God with us. So this isn't just a title, it's the whole point of the story. The promise wasn't just for a new king, it was for God's actual presence to come and be with humanity. Now for the third step, which is surprisingly set in motion by politics. A Roman emperor, Caesar Augustus, calls for a census. This means everyone had to travel back to their ancestral hometown to be counted. And for Joseph, who was a descendant of King David, that town was, you guessed it, Bethlehem. And that journey leads us to the final step. They get to a very crowded Bethlehem, and there's no guest room for them. So the promised king isn't born in a palace. He's born in the most humble place you can imagine and laid in a manger, fulfilling that other ancient prophecy from Micah.
So this incredible, world-changing event has just happened. But who gets the birth announcement? Well, the news goes out to 2 totally different groups of people. And who they were says a lot about the message itself.
It's such a fascinating contrast, right? On one side, you've got these local shepherds, just regular guys doing their job out in the fields, and they get the news from a host of angels. Then, on the other side, you have the Magi. Think of them as brilliant, wealthy scholars from a land far away, and they're guided by a star. The message reaches the lowest of society and the highest, those nearby and those far away. The point is, this story is for everyone.
All right, so we've covered the what of the story. Now let's get into the why. What's the deeper theological meaning behind all of this? Why, according to these ancient texts, did it happen this way?
The Gospel of John, man, it just takes us to a whole other level. he doesn't start with the manger. He starts with the Word, which is his term for the divine creative power of God. And he says that the eternal Word became flesh. The infinite became finite. God became a human being. It's just a huge, huge concept.
And the Apostle Paul really doubles down on this idea that the timing was everything. The key phrase here is, when the set time had fully come. That tells us this wasn't random or an accident. It was a divine appointment, a perfectly timed plan that had been in motion all along. That long, 700-year wait, it was all part of the design.
So that's the ancient story and its deep theological meaning. But let's bring it into today. Why does this story still have such a powerful grip on our culture? Why does it still matter?
You know, our source material really boils it down to this one simple but really powerful idea. In the middle of all the busyness and chaos of the holiday season, the real invitation is just to pause and let the wonder of it sink in. The idea of the creator of the universe becoming a tiny, helpless baby. That's the paradox, right? Completely vulnerable, and at the very same time, the hope of the entire world.
And really, that sense of wonder is what's behind all the feelings we associate with the holidays. When we wish each other love, joy, peace, and hope, we're really just echoing the core themes of this ancient story. A story about a divine love, some really joyful news, a promise of peace, and a long-awaited hope finally coming true.
And so we'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. It's a question that takes this massive historical narrative of a promise kept and brings it right down to a personal level. How might the pure awe of this story of a God who would become one of us shape the way you see the world and maybe even God's love for you today?
This video is prepared by Shri B.L. Nomsap. Once again, make sure to share, like and subscribe and give your valuable positive feedback and comments. Thank you.